everybody, and welcome to another episode of She Hates Whiskey. I'm David, and I love whiskey.
My name's Meredith, and I hate whiskey, but I love him.
Yeah, so if you're new to She Hates Whiskey, this is the journey of a person who loves whiskey and a person who doesn't, trying to learn about, learning to like whiskey, but most importantly, just having fun. It is cold month, week, something or other. So Meredith has been suffering through a cold, so we thought rather than do an episode focused on her trying to get the nuances of whiskey or anything like that, which would seem futile, we thought we would do an episode about kind of what Meredith in particular, but myself as well, has learned over the first quarter of a year of her trying to learn how to drink and enjoy whiskey. So Meredith has come up with a top 5 tips for people getting into whiskey, and she's going to give kind of the side of a person who's trying to get into whiskey, and I'm going to try to fill in a little bit, trying to explain maybe from the side of the person who really wants the other person to get into whiskey, how to maybe tone things down and approach it the right way. So let's jump right in so we can get to the stuff in front of us.
So I came up with 5 tips for my fellow whiskey haters, but that are maybe a little bit interested in whiskey, kind of. So my first tip is cocktails, because cocktails are good at hiding flavors. And I'm going to have a cocktail right now. So
we thought what she could handle was an Irish coffee.
Yeah. So
we've already mixed the coffee sugar and Jameson Cask-Mate's Stout Edition.
And then I whipped up some freshly made whipped cream.
Yeah, so Meredith,
right here.
Meredith has been working to improve her skills at baking. She's been really enjoying it, and she thought she would make her own whipped cream. I'm pretty sure most of this so far she hasn't been that excited about, but I'm pretty sure that if it wasn't for the whipped cream that you just made, you wouldn't be nearly as excited.
Is that too much?
No, you can put in as much as you want.
I like that much.
So yes, that looks great.
Okay, so
cocktails.
Yeah, that's my first tip.
Yeah, and so
cocktails are more interesting, and like they're a good way to try things when you're like out with people or whatever, to like try some cocktails.
Low impact.
Yeah.
I think so. We did a video on cocktails. Please go back and check that out. And I think one of the good things about cocktails is you can kind of work your way up. So you can start with cocktails like this, where you barely taste anything, and you can kind of slowly work up your way to the more spirit-forward cocktails.
Where you can really taste the whiskey.
And most importantly, cocktails are really fun. And I think if you're a person trying to get someone to try whiskey, trying it in a cocktail is a good way. Because of the fun factor. You can create really cool cocktails like we did a month or two ago. Have fun with it as the person trying to get the person into whiskey. Make it as fun. You put in the effort. Don't put the pressure on them to like make something fancy and interesting.
Nice.
Make them something really cool and fun.
Try it.
Yeah. So next, you had a thought.
I did.
Tip 2.
Tip 2. Are you gonna do a thing?
Probably. We'll find out.
Cute. So you have to. My second tip is ice.
Yes.
I found early on that whiskey by itself was unbearable, completely unbearable. I also happen to be a person that likes my drinks either cold or hot. So the room temperature liquid is not at all appealing to me. So putting it on ice, and it also obviously as the ice melts it dulls the flavor a bit more. And what do we have here?
Oh yeah, so I thought I would join in by pouring myself. Yeah, go for it. So I had a nice big ice cube, and I'm putting on some bourbon, which I usually don't drink a lot of whiskey on the rocks, but bourbon for me works really well. How's that?
Oh my god, that's good. That's so good.
So bourbon, you find that different whiskeys hold up to ice differently. Jameson or Irish in general tends to be weakened really easily. Things like bourbon and Scotch, especially bourbon, really hold up to ice more. So I like a bourbon on ice.
And you were saying, as a person who loves whiskey, sometimes it's hard. Did you just say that? I was in the zone.
No, sorry. Okay. I got distracted by how much you enjoyed that. As a kind of a snobbish whiskey person, there is a resistance to say, oh, well, don't put it on ice because you won't taste anything. But if it's the difference between them drinking whiskey at all or not drinking, let them use ice, let them enjoy it, make the experience as nice as possible.
Don't give them your favorite whiskey
Yeah.
that you really, really love for them to water down and go, blah, blah, it's better, blah.
Yeah.
All right.
Too true.
So,
Number 3.
3 is start with Irish whiskey. At this point in my whiskey career journey, I've tried lots and lots of different whiskeys, and every time we've had Irish, if it's in a lineup of blind whiskey tastings or just a lineup of regular whiskey tastings, it's always been my favorite. And I think
Or at least the most accessible.
the most accessible, yeah. I wouldn't avoid it. I wouldn't seek it out. I still don't love it.
Yeah.
But there's no harsh alcohol burn. It's still got that warming effect.
And even the nicer ones like we've had, like Green Spot, that are
Yeah.
more flavorful, it's never harsh.
No, it tends to be, I think, sweeter
Yeah.
and I don't know, easier to drink.
And this is funny because from my side, Irish has never been my favorite. I think it's fine, but it is a little too accessible for me. I like my whiskey to kind of like smack me around a little bit.
Oh.
But so that's why, for me, it wasn't my go-to. Now, I do think there could be some value if you are providing the whiskey to give them a sample early on to at least, if for no other reason than they'll find, ooh, the Irish is really easy. I kind of like that, even if it's just in comparison.
And obviously it's a tasting. Everyone might not love that.
And you might, like for me, the whiskey that like first spoke to me was Lefroy, and it's super peaty and aggressive, but that made it interesting to me, so you never know.
You never know.
That being said, you really can't go wrong with Jameson from just an approachability standpoint.
That's my tip.
That's number 3.
Oh,
Number 4.
Number 4 is, I think the setting where you enjoy whiskey is important.
Right.
I think that if you're outside in August at a barbecue and you go up to someone and you're like, this whiskey's awesome, and they're like, what? It's like 90 degrees and I'm eating a hot dog. I'm not going to drink that. Like, that's a terrible whiskey scenario. But if you're like cuddled up in front of a fire, like with your little, this is my little thing, my little bubble glass. What is that?
Glencairn?
Yep. This is my little bubble glass, and I'm in front of a fire, and I'm all snuggled up, and I'm drinking it, and it's warm. I know not everyone lives somewhere where it's cold, but also drinking it in the winter, I
But
think
then
is
relatively
really nice.
cool. You even hear people in
it's
California
cool.
being like, oh, it's 50 degrees, I'm freezing.
No help, sure. So I think the setting where you enjoy whiskey is important.
And as someone trying to get a person into whiskey, finding those good times when they're relaxed,
Don't
there's not a ton of people.
Shots at a bar or something.
That's not necessarily the best time you want to get someone into it. But finding those low-key moments where you can be like, oh, hey, why don't you give this a try? And maybe they take a sip and like, ooh, that feels so nice and warming. I just came in from outside, it's cold, whatever.
Also on like a hike in a flask.
Something like that, too.
That's nice.
Where those great memories happen, where you kind of associate it.
Aw,
All right.
My last one
Final,
is
number 5.
from a personal nerdy standpoint, but I think there may be other nerds out there. The more I learned about or I took a little time to learn about the history and the culture surrounding whiskey, I got more interested and I wanted to be a part of it a little bit more.
Appreciation.
Yeah, I appreciated it. I appreciated the art, the uses of it. In history, I just thought it was really, really interesting. And you're such a nerd. I mean, I live with a whiskey nerd, so you've taught me a lot too. And it's something that you want to be a part of because you want to be involved in those conversations and learning about it. So
yeah, and I would say I would be a bit hesitant to recommend doing what I do sometimes, which is just to start spouting information at someone.
It's awesome all the time.
But maybe you have that friend or significant other and you've gave them a sip of Irish whiskey on a cold night while you're hanging by the fire, or an Irish coffee,
You made them
and they're kind of like, ooh, I never really drank Irish whiskey before. Maybe it's a couple weeks later, it just happens to be their birthday or a special occasion, you get them a cool little book on the history of Irish whiskey or something, and maybe that's a good way to kind of subtly get them kind of interested in it.
Yeah.
And kind of move on from there.
Yeah.
So I think those were 5 pretty good tips. I think certainly by the end we got into kind of a little more broad things that don't really come to mind straight away.
Yeah.
Cocktails, ice, these are pretty
Irish
go-to in the world, Irish whiskey. But making that full kind of, you're in the right setting, you
Yeah.
have the right drink, and you kind of get them to be excited about it in their own way,
Yeah.
and try to tailor
Like
it
a
to the
nerdy
person.
book.
Yeah. So I hope that was helpful for those of you out there. This might actually be a good first episode to share
Start
with.
here.
Yeah, if you are trying to get your friend into whiskey, this might be the best way to start, and then
Yeah.
bring them up with you through the whole journey. So go back, check out the early episodes. If you've enjoyed, please share with friends, family, like, subscribe, the whole thing. Follow us on Instagram. We probably need to be posting on
Oh
there
yeah.
more.
Oops.
Maybe you can just take random photos of me drinking all the time, because I just do that a
Everyone,
little bit
you
too
want to
much.
see that, right, folks?
Right. So hope you guys had a good time. Until next week, continue enjoying whiskey.
Or not. Don't.
Yeah. And we'll see you next week.
Bye.